Hey y'all, I'm Alicia. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about 12 books that I'll be reading this year based on your recommendation. So without any further ado, let's get right into the video. So the concept of reading 12 books that are recommended to you by friends started over on Instagram. I can't remember exactly who recommended what, so I'm so sorry if you recommended something and I don't give you a shout out here. But today we're going to be going over the 12 books that I'll be reading. My plan is to read one a month. That way I stay current and up to date. I actually already read one of the books that was recommended to me and I ended up really enjoying my reading experience of it. So I know that I have some really great gems in here that I'm really going to enjoy. So the first book on this list is Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby, and this was recommended to me by Lindsay at Lindsay Loves Reading over on Instagram. This is the first book that I actually already read for the month of January. It is this fast-paced, plot-driven revenge story / thriller. It involves two dads, Ike and Buddy Lee, who don't have very much in common other than they are ex-convicts and that their sons were brutally murdered. While they were alive, they weren't the most welcoming to their sons, and now that they're dead and the cops and detectives have run out of leads, they really want to find out who did this to their sons. And so these two unlikely fathers come together to get justice for their sons. They are a dynamic duo and the book tackles racism, homophobia, transphobia. Really enjoyed my reading experience of it, and I'll talk about it more during my January wrap-up. The next book on this list ended up being recommended to me by Hillary over at Bookborn, and she recommended Exhalation by Ted Chiang. I'm actually very excited to pick this up because one, I haven't read anything by Ted Chiang yet, but also I believe it is a collection of short stories. And thirdly, I feel like I have similar taste in books as Hillary. A lot of the stuff that she enjoys, I end up enjoying. So I know that this is going to be a hit. I know it, I feel it. And so I really don't know what the unifying factor is for these short story collections, especially when it comes to short story collections. I don't like to know anything going into them. The one thing I do know is that it is considered science fiction, so I'm guessing it has to do something with humanity, with science. I really have no idea, but I am excited to get to it. The next two books on this list were actually recommended to me by my partner, Ben. One of them I had actually already started, but I didn't end up finishing it because we were reading it at the same time and we only had one book. So he finished it first and then reading plans got in the way and I never came back to it. But it wasn't because I wasn't enjoying it. It was because I was just very invested in the books that I was reading at the time. And the first one is called Crying in Mart, and this is by Michelle Zauner. And this is her memoir, and she talks about her relationship with her mom, and she talks about growing up here in Oregon. The reason we ended up picking up this book is because she's in a band whose name I forgot, but Ben was a really big fan of her music for a very long time, and once we found out she came out with a memoir, we're like, yes, we need to read it. But yes, we do have a copy. Here it is. Honestly, it's such a stunning cover. I love that there's like noodles in the middle and you have chopsticks at the end. I don't know why, that just feels so H-Marty. So the next book on this list was also recommended to me by Ben, and this is Djinn Patrol on the Purple Line by Deepa Anappara. And this is another one that I have already kind of started. So I requested it on Libby as an audiobook, but I just wasn't feeling the audiobook. I just felt like there was a lot that I was missing and wasn't grasping. So I am requesting it as an electronic book so I can read it physically. I feel like this is the way that I'm going to absorb the information. And Ben ended up loving this book. After he read it, he just talked about it over and over and over again. And you know, like when you read a really good book and you just want to talk to someone about it, even though they haven't read it, and you don't want to spoil things for them, but you're like, oh, you have to read this book because I want to talk to you about it. That's the kind of energy that he had. He just really loved it. And I know that if he really loves something, I'm definitely going to enjoy it, and it might also be a favorite for me. And so to give you a brief synopsis, this says, 3 friends venture into the most dangerous corners of a sprawling Indian city to find their missing classmate. Down market lanes crammed with too many people, dogs, and rickshaws, past stalls that smell of cardamom and sizzling oil, below a smoggy sky that doesn't let through a single blade of sunlight. And all the way at the end of the purple metro line lies a jumble of tin-roofed homes where 9-year-old Jai lives with his family. From his doorway, he can spot the glittering lights of the city's fancy high-rises, and though his mother works as a maid in one, to him they all seem 1,000 miles away. Jai drools outside sweatshops, watches too many reality police shows, and considers himself to be smarter than his friends, Pari and Faiz. When a classmate goes missing, Jai decides to use the crime-solving skills he has picked up from TB to find him. He asks Pari and Faiz to be his assistants, and together they draw up lists of people to interview and places to visit. But what begins as a game turns sinister as other children start disappearing from the neighborhood. Jai, Pari, and Faiz have to confront terrified parents, an indifferent police force, and rumors of soul-snatching djinns. As the disappearances edge even closer to home, the lives of Jai and his friends will never be the same again. Now, I think the reason that Ben initially picked this one up is because it sounded like it was going to be a mystery, and he really likes mysteries, and there is a mystery component of it. And even though he really enjoyed the mystery, what he loved more were the cultural references to India, the food, and also this conversation of haves versus have-nots, and the stories of these children that most people seem to overlook. So I feel like it's going to be one that is actually very emotional, and I'm going to learn a lot more about India. So I don't know if excited is the word that I would use to describe how I'm feeling about going into this book, but I definitely think I have some appreciation for Ben bringing this book to my attention so that I can go ahead and read it. The next 3 books on this list, I have no idea who recommended them to me, and I'm so sorry that I can't remember, but it's actually a trilogy. The first one starts with The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty, and this is going to be the Dababov trilogy. They did recommend the entire series to me, so I added all 3 books to the list, and it just happens that I do have the very first one. This is a series that I've been meaning to read over and over and over and over again, but the problem with fantasy series for me is that I can't be reading too many at the same time because then I get overwhelmed. So once I pick this one up, I'm going to read the books in succession so that I could finish them and I won't have any distractions and I won't have to reread them before going to the next one. So I don't know very much about this series, so I will go ahead and just give you a brief synopsis of City of Brass. Nari has never believed in magic. Certainly, she has power. On the streets of 18th century Cairo, she's a con woman of unsurpassed talent. But she knows better than anyone that the trade she uses to get by, palm readings, are all tricks, sleight of hand, and learned skills, and ends to be delightful. But when Nari accidentally summons an equally sly, darkly mysterious Djinn warrior to her side during one of her cons, she is forced to accept that the magical world she thought only existed in childhood stories is real. For the warrior tells a new tale. Across hot, windswept sands lies Dabavad, the legendary city of brass, a city which Nari is irrecoverably bound. So that's really exciting to me because it feels like there's going to be magical elements, but there's also going to be this very witty and clever main character with a lot of politics, and I love politics in my fantasy and sci-fi, so it's one that I'm really excited to get to. So the next 3 books were recommended to me by Charmaine over at Traveling Through Books on Instagram. The first one I'm a little bit scared of just because it's the start to a brand new series, although I did tell myself at the beginning of the year that I am committing to this series. So even though only the first book is on this list, I will be reading the entire series this year because I committed myself to it and it's finally time that I do, and that is going to be the Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee, with the first book being Jade City. Now, all I know about Jade City is that there's like a mafia involved and that it's very high stakes and there's a lot of action. So I'll give you a very brief synopsis. For centuries, honorable Greenbone warriors have used magical jade to enhance their abilities and defend the island of Kikon from foreign invasion. Now the war is over and a new generation vies for control of Kikon. 4 siblings of the powerful Kaw family must prepare for battle, and the fragile peace between the clans is about to break. That doesn't really give us much, but it gives us enough, and that's all I need. The next book that Charmaine recommended is one that I'm really glad that she did because it's another book that I've been meaning to get to that I still haven't, but this is going to be The Night Tiger by Yangsze Choo, and this, if I'm not mistaken, is a magical realism book. The reason that I initially got it is because of the cover. It has a beautiful cover. It's fantastic. It's beautiful. So thank you so much for recommending this to me, Charmaine. I know that I'm going to love it. The next book that Charmaine ended up recommending is one that she's actually talked to me about before and one that I was eventually meaning to pick up, but it's another series, or at least this one I think is a duology, so it's not as intimidating for me to start, and that is going to be Dread Nation by Justina Ireland. And this is a young adult historical fiction duology, if I'm not mistaken, and for a brief synopsis it says, Jane McKean was born 2 days before the dead began to walk the battlefields of Gettysburg and Chancellorsville. derailing the war between the states and changing America forever. In this nation, safety for all depends on the work of a few, and laws like Native and Re-Education Act require certain children attend combat schools to learn to put down the dead. But there are also opportunities, and Jane is studying to become an attendant, trained in both weaponry and etiquette to protect the well-to-do. It's a chance for a better life for Black girls like Jane. After all, not even being the daughter of a wealthy white Southern woman can save her from society's expectations. But that's not a life Jane wants. Almost finished with her education at Miss Preston's School of Combat in Baltimore, Jane is set on returning to her Kentucky home and doesn't pay much mind to the politics of eastern cities. With their talk of returning America to the glory of its days before the dead rose, and when families around Baltimore County begin to go missing, Jane is caught in the middle of a conspiracy. One that finds her in desperate fight for her life against some powerful enemies, and the restless dead, it would seem, are least of her problems. Doesn't that just sound so good? I personally am a very big fan of zombie movies. I don't think I've actually read a zombie book, but this book is also going to be laced with history, so I think it'll be a very great and interesting combination of the two, and I can't wait to read it. If I'm not mistaken, this next book was also recommended to me by Lindsay, but that was And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. This is a very classic mystery novel, and I do believe it's a closed circle mystery where people start dying or disappearing and they have to find out who's killing them. I know very little about this, and I have been meaning to read Agatha Christie because lately I've been really liking mystery novels, specifically Japanese mystery novels, because they tend to be cozy for me. So I can't wait to finally read something by the Queen, Agatha Christie. Hopefully I really like her books. I was staying away for a while because I read that book by Peter Swanson. I forgot the name of it now, but it spoiled like a bunch of different books, and one of them was an Agatha Christie book. So I've been kind of putting Agatha Christie off because I didn't know where to start with her, but also I wanted to forget the ending of the book that was spoiled in that one book by Peter Swanson. So yes, really excited to get to that one. I also have no idea who recommended this to me, so I am so sorry, but the last and final book on this list is The Hole by Hye-young Pyun, and it was translated by Sora Kim Russell. So it's a translated book, so you know me, I love reading translated fiction, and I believe this is a psychological thriller that talks about loneliness and about human nature, which are buzzwords for me. In this intense, gripping novel, Ogi has woken from a coma after causing a devastating car accident that took his wife's life and left him paralyzed and badly disfigured. His caretaker is his mother-in-law, a widow grieving the loss of her only child. Ogi is neglected and left alone in his bed. His world shrinks to the room he lies in, and his memories of his troubled relationship with his wife, a sensitive, intelligent woman who found all of her life goals thwarted, except for one, cultivating the garden in front of their house. But soon Ogi notices his mother-in-law in the abandoned garden, uprooting what his wife had worked so hard to plant, and obsessively digging larger and larger holes. When asked, she answers only that she is finishing what her daughter started. So, I mean, it says that it's like evoking Misery by Stephen Esk, which I haven't read, but that sounds kind of disturbing. I don't know what it is about holes, but the act of someone digging a bunch of holes for what seems to be no particular reason sounds really disturbing to me. It sounds really unsettling and disturbing to me. I just really got chills down my spine right now. I don't know what it is about holes, but they do something to me. So those are the 12 books that I'll be reading over the next 12 months. Like I mentioned, I already tackled Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. I will be reading all of these books. I just don't know in what order. Let me know down below what books do you think I should prioritize, or which ones you'll think I'll love the most. That way I can read those first. Or do I want to read the ones that I love the most first? I don't know. Maybe I'll save The Hole for October, just because it sounds like it's going to be disturbing, and that seems like a good time to read disturbing things. If you've made it this far, leave a coffee emoji down below. That is what I'm drinking. And don't forget to like and subscribe and ring that notification bell if you like my channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!